Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first town hall of the fall term. And a big thank you to those of you who were able to join us for the coffee break just prior to the town hall. It was great to be able to see some of you in a casual setting and share some fun stories. As a guest on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, I'm always honored to offer an opening. And we do these opening and offer thanks in this fashion as words that are spoken before all else when we start important gatherings and events such as a town hall. We offer from our hearts to Mother Earth our thanks and tobacco. We say thank you for the grandfathers and grandmothers of yesterday, today, and tomorrow for keeping and sharing their knowledge. We say thank you to the spirits of the winds, fire, water, and earth. We say thank you to the spirits of the north, the east, the south, and the west. And we say thank you to Mother Earth for the great bounty and the harvest that is taking place at this time of the year, so that we can live our lives in a good way and for us to be gathered today with a good mind. Miigwech. I will now introduce the members of our panel for today's town hall. Mark Savinkov, Vice President Advancement. Chris Jensen, Senior Vice President Academic. Diane McCutcheon, Vice President Human Resources. Dwayne McNair, Vice President Finance and Administration. Ron Diganadasan McCluster, Vice President Truth, Reconciliation, and Indigenization. Tracy McDougall, Director, President's Office in Communications. Krista Pearson, Registrar, attending on behalf of Laura Sandbra. David Soltis, Director of People and Culture, and Mike Benke, Manager of Occupational Health and Safety and Risk Management. Welcome to you all.
And Ernest.
Is Ernest joining us as well? Okay, all right. Ernest Mulvey, our Director of International Education Center. Thank you for joining us. Some housekeeping tidbits before we get started. If you have any technical questions or concerns, please reach out through the chat box and our events team will assist you. Closed caption is available by clicking on the closed caption button on the main bar of the Zoom feature. There are several ways you can ask a question at the town hall. You can raise your hand using the raise hand feature in the Zoom bar at the bottom, and you can ask your question live. I will select you, and you will need to unmute yourself, and then you can chat with the panel members. Or alternatively, you can ask your question in the Q&A box. Again, it's a feature on the Zoom bar. You can type in your question there, and I will read it out, and then I will point to one of our subject matter experts to answer the questions. Don't put your question in the chat. Put it in the Q&A box. That way, it'll be in the priority order. If time is limited and we can't get through all the questions, we will take the remaining questions, we will answer them, and then we'll post them on my AC in the days following the town hall. If you're watching through the live stream on YouTube, you can submit your question in the chat on YouTube, and our event team will relay the question to me, and I will point to one of our subject matter experts, and we'll answer that question in the same fashion. First, let's get to some success stories. There's a lot going on at the college. It's always fun to share some of these with you. Two that I want to share with you this morning are as follows. First of all, today is September 27th. It's Monday, and it's the soft opening of the Jack Doyle Athletic and Recreation Center today. So I was lucky enough to see it during the construction as it progressed, and oh my God, what a gorgeous facility. It will be literally a game changer for Algonquin College, not only in terms of physical fitness, but also in terms of recreation and what people can do to really see to their health and their wellness. So really encourage you to visit if you have a chance, if you're on campus. We also did a podcast, myself and our SA president, Emily Ferguson, about the new building, and you can catch that as well. I think we'll put the link in the chat there. It's a great set of questions that Emily and I were able to answer for the podcast to promote the new ARC Center. The next story I want to share briefly with you is that we have renamed one of our Alumni of Distinction Award to honor CFRA producer Brian Fraser. Brian was a recent grad of the college in the radio broadcasting program, and he passed away in February after a battle with leukemia. He was well known despite his short age. He was really well known in the community. Did a lot of great work related to blood donation, and the sense really took to him, and had a great memory send off when he passed away. So we were able to honor his family, his parents, last week at a dinner, and we are renaming the Alumni Recent Grad Award. Will be renamed as the Brian Fraser Recent Grad Award. So this honor will be presented to him and his family as a lasting tribute to Brian for exemplifying the college's values of caring and integrity. Okay, so today we have a couple of presentations to show you, and we will start with Chris, of course, who will talk to you about enrollment, and then followed by an overview of the 2022 winter term plan. So over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Claude. If I could have the next slide, please. I'm going to start off with a rather sobering update on where our fall enrollments have landed. And again, this is, I believe, a diagram that you've seen in previous town halls. That the challenge is, of course, the large sea of red that's here. So these are the day 10 numbers, and so note that as a whole, we have managed to miss our target by about 960 students in a combination of international and domestic students. And the target, of course, is what our budget is built upon. Wide range of factors has gone into this. Note that there were a fair number of level 1 students that we did not realize, but that we also did not get all of the students that we expected returning to arrive back on our campus. And so there's a great deal to unpack here, and the entire academic team, along with Strategic Enrollment Steering Committee and marketing and the registrar's office, are putting our best heads together, not only to sort out what happened, but to make sure that it doesn't happen again and we make adjustments moving forward. But that was a very sobering update on day 10. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Again, the withdrawals. The historical trend, the black line at day 10, 4.4%. Please don't take that as, oh, well, at least we're having withdrawals comparable to where we were at last year. The real number is likely higher, and I just wasn't able to collect the data and update this chart. So we anticipate that we are actually having a greater number of withdrawals now than we have in the past. And in keeping with what we experienced before August 25th and before day 1, again, the challenge for the fall is we ended up with fewer students than we expected, and we are having them withdraw at substantial rates as well. So the message is that in keeping with the philosophy that we're all in this together, and that we all have a role to play in helping our students succeed, helping our learners succeed and get to graduation and that wonderful career moving forward. As a whole, the college, we've got some work to do this fall to make sure that we stem the tide of withdrawals, retain as many students as possible by helping them succeed, by making sure that we are helping them get to where they need to get to. and lots more to follow on that as we move through the fall. But looking forward, if I could go to the next slide, please. There is some reason to be cautiously optimistic for the winter. Lots of information here. I'll let you look through it. But the good news, again, looking over on the right hand side, there seems to be a sea of green as opposed to a sea of red. Although the one bit of red is a bit disturbing, where the first choice for domestic students is down year over year, and first choice students are the ones that are much more likely to convert into a registered student. But I also suggest that we need to remember that we missed our target by the fall by about 950 students. And so we need to try to make up for some of that shortfall in the winter term. So that sea of green is representing where we're at with regards to target, and year over year it changes. But we need to do better than target in winter in order to mitigate the shortfall that we had in the fall. So again, as I said, this is a fairly sobering enrollment update, and we've got some work to do. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Again, just a little bit of where we're at. So we're in terms of progress to target for new domestic students, we're 41% of the way there. Last year, we were 45% of the way to the target. So in paid and confirmed. So again, we need to work harder at converting our applicants into registered students. If we go to the next slide, please. Again, looking at international, again, it looks positive. I mean, 106%. Why isn't that green? Well, the answer is, in part, there's still such great uncertainty. It is excellent news that direct flights from India are now possible again, and which will ease the way for our international students from India joining us. But there's still so much uncertainty that there's a lot more work to be done still. And we're working in the academic area to make sure that we are making as many seats available to international students. We're creating additional space for additional international students, again, to try to mitigate the shortfall we had in the fall. So that target of 1,290, we need to try to do better than that. So that's why that one is yellow. Next slide, please. And I think that was it for the enrollment. So as we move forward with the Q&A later on, if you've got questions about the enrollment, please feel free to ask a question there. But I do want to take a few moments. I don't have slides for this, and we'll invite risk management to add their comments at the end of mine if there's something else to add. But I wanted to share a little bit about what our plans are for the modality of the winter term. And I need to preface this by saying this is a starting point for our planning. We had to start somewhere, and we need to adjust these plans as we move forward according to the conditions that arise as we move forward. So depending on the course of the fourth wave, the efforts that we've been making around vaccination, new variants that come in, recommendations from the Ottawa Public Health, the provincial public health, the provincial government, we may need to backtrack from this starting point. So with that caveat, our starting point for planning for the winter has been that we will not require physical distancing. Masks will still be required, physical distancing will not. And so as we've been loading the academic courses, all of our programming for the winter term, that's been the baseline. That does not mean, hey, all pools open, everybody back in the pool, everybody that wants to come back to campus, come back to campus. That's a different message. The message that I've been giving the academic leadership with regards to planning of the winter term has been This is the next big step toward a return and a recovery from the pandemic. We have been taking slow, methodical steps since July of 2020, not this past July, the previous July, to return to our physical campuses. This is the next major step along the way, but it does not mean that if it can be delivered face-to-face, it will be delivered face-to-face. That's not what we're saying. We need to, at this point, be making good, sound, pedagogical decisions around the future of program delivery. How are we going to want to deliver these programs as we move forward to the future? If it is in the students' best learning interests to be face-to-face, well, we should be making that decision now. If there are reasons that we should be doing remote, let's keep things remote and continue to improve on the quality of learning, as we do with all of our programming. We've had 55 or so years of experience with face-to-face. Many of us have had 19 or 20 months experience with remote. There's still a learning curve, and Learning and Teaching Services is there to support the faculty as we're moving forward with this. So we need to be continuing a continuous improvement process of our remote learning. But there's also the potential for hybrid delivery, a multimodal delivery, which is sometimes referred to as HighFlex. So we will be piloting some HighFlex activities on campus for the winter term. And the challenge with that is it's not simply a matter of having a Zoom meeting going at the same time you're talking to the classrooms. There needs to be different technology. We need to be developing different pedagogy, different teaching approaches. And so we don't have the technology in place widespread across campus to do this really well. We're making a modest investment of about $200,000 in 4 classrooms. 2 on the Ottawa campus, 1 on Perth, 1 in Pembroke, to begin to pilot these activities in the winter term so that we can learn more about what technology supports are needed so that we invest wisely in the future as we go more widespread across campus, as well as determine how much of that type of activity to have across campus. So the messaging for winter is you do not need to plan to physically distance, which means if it makes pedagogic sense to be face-to-face, plan to deliver face-to-face for the winter, but develop a contingency plan in case we need to revert to a remote delivery at some point in the fall as we're looking toward the winter. So that's the update on what our plan for the winter term is at this point. And Mike, did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I think I'd just like to add that I recognize that there's a lot of angst and anxiety out there from people who haven't been on campus. I'd just like to say that we have taken all precautions to make sure that the campus is safe. Risk management hasn't stopped being on campus for the last 2 years that the pandemic has happened, and we have been very busy working with all stakeholders in all areas and departments to make sure that it is safe. So we will continue to do so.
Thanks. And Claude, if I could, just two last quick points. I checked my notes and I realized I forgot two things that I meant to mention.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, Claude?
I said, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, very good. First of all, this is really the embodiment of the learner-driven plan. This is meeting students where they're at, helping them get to where they need to go in ways that work for them. As we begin to invite a larger, well, we have been for quite some time now, as we continue to invite a larger and larger population of non-direct students that are not coming to us directly from high school, those students have a variety of different needs in terms of when they can learn, what other obligations they have outside of their studies. And we need to make sure that we are offering flexible options for those folk. And sometimes, even though they may prefer to be in a face-to-face setting, what works for them is a remote delivery. So it's a complicated mix. And we've also been hearing that the IRCC is unlikely to extend any further their change in rules that would allow international students to begin to study from their home country, which means they are in almost certainty going to revert back to their rules, which state that an international student may not have more than 50% of their program delivered online or remotely, which means that 50% of what they have to do needs to be face-to-face. So we need to take that mix into account as we're planning what we're doing for the winter as well. So it's a complicated answer to what are we going to do for the winter? And there are many different aspects that need to be taken into account. And so those were being made at a program by program, sometimes level by level, and even course by course basis. So that's what I meant to add. My apologies. Back to you, Claude.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, for that very comprehensive enrollment overview, first of all, and as well as the winter term plan scenario and our base assumptions. So thank you to both you and Mike for providing that overview. And we'll now proceed to our pre-submitted questions that were submitted in advance of the town hall. We had a number of them, and some were very similar in nature. So we've grouped those together and we'll be answering them. And there were a couple of questions that had a really quick answer to them. And those, instead of taking time verbally, we're going to put the question and the short answer in the chat. And finally, there was one question that was really, really specific. And we chose to deal with that one offline with the person that asked that particular question. So we'll start off, and the first question, I will read each question and then point to the person who will answer it. So first question is, when will a formal announcement from the college to the students about returning to on-campus next semester? When we completed our loading for winter semester, we were directed to have classes return on campus. We just spoke about this with Chris. It's almost October and students will need to make arrangements, in brackets, childcare, living arrangements, etc. So I guess the continuation of what you were talking about, Chris, perhaps you can expand on that to answer that question.
Winter semester part 3. No, it's a good question and a very fair point. Loading for the winter term is not yet complete. It's coming, it's imminent. So I spoke with our registrar about this. I spoke with Krista, and she has made a commitment to try, not an absolute promise, but to try to get all of the information about modality of delivery and how things are going to be delivered for the winter semester up on the registrar's website by October 8th. Now, in order for her to meet that date, all of my team needs to make sure that they are complete with all of their loading activities in advance of that, because it's that loading where we are noting what that delivery is. So as decisions have been made about what the courses are going to look like this winter, they get loaded, and then Krista will post that very shortly within the next 2 weeks on the registrar's page. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Question number 2, would it not be appropriate for the college to follow suit with the federal government and have September 30th as a holiday for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation to honor the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families, and communities? Ron, could I ask you to speak to this? Oops, sorry, Ron, are you having sound issues here? Okay.
Okay, how about now? There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, this is a really good question and one that I sort of foreseen coming. One of the really exciting things for this upcoming year at Algonquin is a really focused and concentrated engagement critical path where we'll be preparing for a new multi-year strategic plan for indigenization and reconciliation. And part of that engagement will be to ask the community, what do certain things mean for us at the college? So for instance, what does or what should June 21st, Indigenous Peoples Day, look like at the college? Another question will be, what does or what should September 30th look like at the college? And so we'll acknowledge that this is the very first one. The September 30th is the very first one. It's the first time that we as a community, as a country, will be acknowledging this day. And so there's room to explore and to really articulate what we want that to look like for us. I'll say that not having the day off work is something that is very consistent throughout the province. I think all but one other college is following the same suit as we are, and we're encouraging folks to take that time to invest and reflect and to do some self-education. There's a number of items that we have going on this week, a podcast, there's the article, there's an exhibit, the Indigenous Archaeological Field School thing is in Milwaukee, and so we have decided that this would be best spent.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And again, I think this question came up at our last town hall, and we certainly addressed it in that fashion, that you know, a lot of what has been at the root cause of truth and reconciliation was education in nature, and we feel that through education there's tremendous opportunity here to continue to make the truth be known. And as described by Ron, a number of events are going to take place on campus that all of us can participate in order to share in that knowledge. And so receiving knowledge on the truth, being able to participate in reconciliation events, I think will be important, and an important way to recognize that day, to recognize the memories of the children who were lost, and recognize the survivors. Our next question is, what review process is in place to verify that the students' proof of vaccine submission to the app are legitimate? And how will instructors be assured of students' vaccine status? Perhaps I can ask Mike to speak to this one.
Sure. Student submitted documentation is reviewed in terms of identity, confirmation of acceptability of vaccine regimes, and confirmation of regime timing to ensure applicants have attained full vaccination. Students who access campus through designated entrances must show that they're fully vaccinated passport on entry. Due to privacy reasons, obviously, we don't share vaccine status with any faculty or any staff. Students on campus, it's important to note, have been vetted. So if they are on campus, they've already been vetted by security through the app. Regardless, I think it's important to note that all COVID-19 infection prevention and control measures should be applied at all times. Vaccine is a very important, infection control measure, but the last year and a half, 2 years, we haven't had vaccination, and we've been doing very, very well, making sure that all our infection control procedures are in place.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, our next question is, workload has dominated every town hall, yet there does not seem to be an answer or relief, especially in areas like the registrar's office, which seems particularly taxed. Is there a plan for more staffing or even temporary staffing to assist in onboarding new and returning students more efficiently at the start of term? Current levels are not allowing anyone to provide acceptable service to students or for students. Perhaps I can ask Krista to start us off, and maybe Diane.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for this question. Yeah, certainly want to acknowledge that care for our students and their service really matters. We do look at service metrics, and as you would hopefully expect, we do look at those metrics to inform work review. Capacity has certainly been an issue for the registrar's office. So the interesting timing of this question is we're actually just in the process of putting in place both temporary and new positions in the registrar's office to address some specific workload and initiatives that are coming forward. So hopefully we'll see some positive change on this front soon. And again, thank you for your care and always welcome your feedback, not just for the registrar's office. I know that this matters for others as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Krista. And if I could just add to that, I really appreciate the fact that Krista has provided that update on what the registrar's office is doing to address the staffing requirements for the service delivery. It's really important that business units look to see what their staffing requirements are for their committed service delivery. And, you know, workload continues to be a top priority in conversations with our support staff union presidents and our academic union president and our administrators. And what the executive team has set aside some time to continue this conversation at our table over the course of the next couple of weeks to examine on a more holistic perspective the workload conversation. We do always encourage the business units to examine their own needs, like what Krista has just talked about, but certainly from a more holistic perspective, the executive team will be talking about that in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane and Krista, for your response. Our next question. Okay, it's a rather long one, so bear with me as I read it. An article in the latest edition of the Walrus entitled "The Shadowy Business of International Education" shares some frightening information about international student recruitment policies and practices at Canadian academic institutions, including information about highly suspicious and profit-driven recruitment agent system. I know we have the International Education Center to help students once they are here, but what is Algonquin doing to ensure that its international recruitment practices are ethical and in keeping with its core values? The article details a quote-unquote sleazy system that puts profit above student mental health and well-being, and I sincerely hope it isn't a practice that Algonquin is turning a blind eye to. Brackets, the author calls it purposeful denial. With international recruitment targets consistently rising, it would be nice to have some reassurance, both at this town hall and in a larger capacity, that Algonquin does not support, endorse, or buy into the recruitment processes outlined in the article. All right, so I believe we have Ernest with us to help address this question. So I'll turn it over to Ernest.
Thank you, Claude. So we are well aware of this Walrus this article that came from Walrus. We saw it about a month and a half ago, and it does highlight some practices that are a concern, I think, across all public post-secondary institutions across Canada. Our brand is important, and we want to be recognized as a place where students come to study and learn and grow, and not as a place that is simply a pathway for immigration. So I'll address the question in two ways. So number one, we do closely monitor our agent network. For those of you who don't understand fully how we bring international students into Canada, they have two ways to apply. They can either apply directly through our application portal, in which we would nurture and support them through that process, or students may choose to use an education agent in their home country that will help them, number one, select a post-secondary institution that fits their needs, and often sometimes help with the application process and applying for a study permit visa. We work with select agents. Our agents, the number of agents we work with is select and focused on particular countries. We review our agent agreements every 2 years and determine if we want to continue to work with that agent, and that's based on several factors, including the conversion rate, meaning how many applications did we receive versus how many students actually came to study with us. If there's a low conversion rate, we will no longer work with that agent because it's one of the marks that demonstrate to us that the agent is not interested in ensuring that students are well informed and wanting to study with us. In our agreement itself, there are several clauses that relate to ethical practices. And if we find that an agent is violating one of those clauses, we will terminate the agreement with that agent. And we have done that in the past. Up until very recently, we just exited our relationship with an agent. So the final point, of course, is that we also have staff on the ground. These are contract staff, but they work in some of our key markets, including India, China, Brazil, Vietnam, and Turkey. And they directly represent Algonquin College. Their only employment is to represent Algonquin College. And they will work with agents to ensure that agents are understanding of Algonquin College's programs, our mission requirements, and our locations. And that includes annual or sometimes more than one-time visits to the agent to refresh their knowledge on Algonquin College. We've created a webinar for agent training that agents need to go through to ensure that they're aware of how Algonquin College, of what Algonquin College is and our programs of study. And again, our staff on the ground will connect with an agent if we feel that the agent is providing incorrect information to a prospective student. So we do take our ethical considerations in high regard, and it's very important to us that we recruit students and they're coming to Algonquin College and our campuses with full knowledge of the experience they're going to have. Finally, just so you know, on this front, we do survey students every November, and they can comment on their experience in the application process, both directly with us at Algonquin College, but also their experience with the education agent. We also follow up with education agents and track a net promotion score to ensure that we're providing information and services to the education agent that is of value to them. So on the second front of that article, if you're looking at the article, it also talks about settlement services. And so we do several activities to support international student arrival and settlement at Algonquin College. The first is with pre-arrival webinars that are conducted in some of our larger markets, such as India and China, where students and their family can join our staff and learn more about the process of coming to Canada and Algonquin College programs. We've created two great services for students. One is on Brightspace called Succeed in Canada, and that covers a range of information for students from pre-arrival to what to expect, to how to find employment and post-graduation services. That students can access this all from pre-arrival all the way through their studies. And this information is also duplicated on an app that we have called the iSent app that has the pre-arrival courses, but also provides a lot of information to students as they're ongoing with their studies at Algonquin College, including updates during COVID-19 as the situation may change quickly, and it's a way for us to communicate with them. So just in general, we want to support the Algonquin College brand of caring, learning, integrity, and respect. And we consider the ethical treatment of international students of top priority for the International Education Center.
Thank you very much, Ernest, for your comprehensive answer. Chris, is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
Ernest did an amazing job of providing an answer to that. And if I could, the only thing that I'd want to add is our international students are Algonquin students. We care about their success. We want to transform their hopes and dreams into lifelong success the same way that we do for any of our other students. We recognize that there are other challenges that our international students have to face that our domestic students don't, and our domestic students have challenges to face that our international students don't. So our approaches may be very different, but the outcome is the desired outcome is still the same. We want them to be successful. And so I know Ernest and his team cares very deeply about that, as does the academic area as a whole. So thank you, Ernest.
In fact, it's an all of Algonquin mission on this front, and everyone at the college cares deeply about how our international students are welcome right from the time that they're making their selection while they're in their home country to their arrival, and how supported they are throughout their studies, both in the learning environment and also outside of that. So I just want to make sure people understand it's an all of Algonquin effort to really welcome all of our students, including our international students, and make sure they're all well supported for the needs they have. And those, as was explained, can vary from learner to learner for us to be able to really provide the services they need to be successful. So thank you to Ernest and to Chris. We'll go to our next question. Okay, as remote delivery is still a reality for many faculty throughout through the fall the 2021 semester, please explain fully about faculty being able to teach remotely from a province other than Ontario. Maybe I'll start with you, Chris, on that.
Sure. Let me start, and if I get stuck, I'll ask for a little bit of support from Diane. But basically, the going remote has opened people's eyes to a possibility that we may not have considered in the past, and that is a much broader collection of opportunities for residents. However, that said, there are some very real limitations to where faculty in particular can work. Not the least of which is the collective agreement only binds folks living in Ontario. It has no bearing outside of Ontario. So a faculty member living outside of Ontario could not be covered by that collective agreement. There are also concerns about benefits. The benefits are Ontario-based benefits. And so living in Quebec, for example, can have very different impacts on health benefits, other retirement benefits. And so the response is still, even if you can work remotely, if we've determined that your job can be done remotely, it still needs to be done within the province of Ontario, outside of that small capital region reciprocity agreement with Quebec. I believe those are the only exceptions that I'm aware of. So Diane, did you have anything to add to that?
Thanks, Chris. You've answered that pretty fully. What I would like to do is perhaps at the end of the town hall, and when we get into answering and addressing those questions that we didn't have time for, I would like to be able to provide a written response. We did that, I believe, to a May town hall, where in the overflow questions, we provided a written response specifically on this topic. And I think it's important to, again, refresh everyone's memory and provide it again in writing. So I will take that away as an action item. And when we do provide the responses afterwards in writing, that you'll be able to find that as well. Some of the points that Chris mentioned, but it will be articulated in writing to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris and Diane. And we'll take that away as again, an action item to refresh as we've covered this in the past, I know. Our next question, please. All right, it's a long one. Again, bear with me. We've been asked to explore which of our courses can be delivered remotely in the winter. There seems to be some confusion in messaging that we've received. What is the purpose of this request? Is it to reduce the amount of students on campus in the winter due to COVID, or strategy moving to address the learner-driven plan? Can you be clear and transparent in what is in the request? At this point, we've heard 3 different reasons, and it makes a difference in how we approach this, as we have found things done in a trial basis often are unable to be reversed in our program. Maybe Chris, I'll go with you on that one.
Sure. And let me affectionately title this Winter 2022 Part 4. I do hope that some of my previous responses have touched on this, and you feel like you're getting the information that you need. But let me reiterate just a couple of points that I made earlier. The winter 2022 term really is that next step toward a return and a recovery from the pandemic. We're not out of it yet, and we may find ourselves deeper in than we'd care to for the winter 2022 term, and need to make need to enact some contingency plans. But the starting point for all of that planning is around learner driven. It's around flexibility, personalized education, helping students get from where they are to where they need to be in ways that work for them. So it's about pedagogical decisions rather than strictly a response to the COVID pandemic. And the comment at the very end, on a trial basis, often unable to be reversed in our program. We've been reversing any number of things as we've been through this pandemic. I'm not entirely certain I understand the nature of that concern, but rest assured that this is a continuous improvement process. We go through annual curriculum review. We go through the cyclical 5-6 year program quality review. Program standards change from the ministry. Our programming is constantly being improved upon. And so we will always be making improvements and always be changing things in order to best meet the needs of our learners. So I think that's my response for now, Claude.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And we'll go to our final question of the pre-submitted questions. I think that's the final one, not sure. Anyway, as you're aware, Chris, that Algonquin Online is posting course outlines prepared by the daytime departments, but does not necessarily follow the learning resources nor the weighting of assessments. If you are aware of this practice, is it acceptable to you?
Well, I've had some good conversations with academic development. I had good conversations with Algonquin College Online, and I do have some things to report in response to that. But I think I will also acknowledge that there is certainly room for improvement as AC Online has become a larger and larger important part of our program offerings, and will continue to do so. We need to continually adjust our practices and our procedures to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the students. So with regards to our current practice, the vast majority, over 90% of courses that are offered through AC Online have no differences between the face-to-face delivery and the AC Online delivery as it comes to learning resources and weighting of assessments and such. But there are a small number where there are some differences for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's as simple as the learning resource that's chosen for the face-to-face delivery is simply not available as an electronic resource. And so alternative decisions need to be made for that sort of thing. There are some challenges with timing, as AC Online has many more intakes per year than our face-to-face programming. Even more than once a term, they will often have multiple intakes, monthly intakes for programs. And there are times that the publisher changes versions in the middle of a year and says, the electronic version, the only thing we've got available is this new version, which is not the same version that's published in the course outline, but we're stuck in those cases. But rest assured that the learning and vocational outcomes are always the same. There are no changes in the learning outcomes, the vocational learning outcomes. There are sometimes some changes to assessment. And again, dealing with being learner-driven, learner-focused, best practices and asynchronous online learning do not lend themselves well to having a small number of high-risk assessments throughout the year. So if you've got the course is 30% term paper, 30% midterm, and a 40% final. That doesn't lend itself well to successful online learning. It's much better to have a smaller number of more frequent assessments that come along. But regardless of the path to get to the end, let me reiterate that the learning outcomes are always the same. So, yep, there are times that we need to improve communication between face-to-face delivery and AC online delivery. And you have my commitment that we will continue to make improvements in that communication. And that we need to ensure that the course outlines that we are providing our students are accurate, and that the CSIs closely match the course outlines. So am I aware of the practice? I am aware of the practice. I believe that there are some acceptable reasons for some changes, but that we need to improve on that process. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chris. And I believe this was the last of our pre-submitted questions. So we'll now go to live questions. And again, let me reiterate that there are several ways in which you can ask a question to the panel. You can do so by raising your hand in the raise hand feature in the Zoom bar. You'll be selected to ask your question live. You'll need to unmute yourself when I call upon you, and then you can chat with the panel. Alternatively, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom, again in the Zoom bar, and that will allow you to type your question. I will read it and then point to one of our panelists to answer the question. And if we can't get through all the questions, we'll take the rest away. We'll answer them and post those on my AC in days following the town hall. And finally, if you're watching on this live stream on YouTube, you can put a question through the chat in YouTube, and the events team will relay that question to me, and I will read it out. And then again, I will point to a panelist to answer the question. All right, so let's get started with our live questions. So we have a number of questions in the Q&A. We have a couple of hands raised as well. So I'll take the first two that were there before any hand were raised. We'll take those first two questions from the Q&A, and then I'll go to raised hands, and then we'll come back to Q&A. All right, so first is rapid testing on campus does not open till 8:30 a.m. Classes start at 8 a.m. Students are stressed to get back in time for class. Any way to fix this? Perhaps I can ask Krista, who's representing Student Services here, if she can help launch us with that question.
Thank you.
Answer. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So did reach out to make sure I would have the correct information here. So it is opening at 8:30. The recommendation is that students actually get the testing. If they have an 8 a.m. test, that they're getting it the day prior. That will ensure that, should there be any wait time, that they would with confidence make their start time on campus. In addition, the numbers of the tests have actually dropped from last week, from just over 800 to just over, so originally just over 800 to 500 last week. So there's some improvement, and the processing time, I'm advised, has been improving, so that the wait time should be reduced. So for those students that need to get the test in advance, we recognize this may not be ideal, but thinking of workload capacity and our health services team who's ready and willing to support the students at 8:30, we hope this is a suitable solution. Thanks.
Thanks, Krista. Yeah, folks need to be able to plan a bit. We're asking for 2 R8 tests per week. And don't wait till the last minute. If you've got a class at 8 o'clock, that test should have been done, the day before, in order to make sure you have your results in time so that you can attend class in time. So thank you, Krista. Next question from the Q&A here. Getting a lot of backlash in my role from students and parents claiming they weren't aware of vaccine policy. And we sent a reminder email to new incoming students before October 30th comes into effect. It would be easier for them to get the questions out of the way previous to starting or coming back with new implementation of policy. For sure, this is something that we would have loved to have had ample time to give people months of warning on this. I have to say this came about rather rapidly. We did our best to communicate on all possible channels, starting from my communique to emails to students to social media, and our website as well has been updated. Again, we're trying very hard to make sure we communicate on all possible venues that parents and learners would use as their regular vehicle for consuming information about the college. But I recognize that in some cases, some people just skim those, they gloss over it, they don't necessarily read all the fine print, and then sometimes they come to the campus and not completely aware of all the requirement. And it is complex, I have to say. These sets of guidelines, these policies are you have to read them a couple of times to make sure it sinks in, and you know exactly what to do. But we also ask people, if you're not clear, ask your question, make sure that we're able to answer you before you come on campus. So clearly there's more communication we need to do, and we'll take that away. Make sure that people are crystal clear that as time progresses, if they continue to be unvaccinated, there will be consequences to choices that are made. And I'm not sure if members of the panel wish to expand on this answer that I just gave. I'll just scan our panelists for a minute here. See, Krista?
Claude, I can confirm that for our winter term, all students will receive specific communications. Again, as you say, making sure students understand and have read them. We just need to ensure that there are available supports to help explain, but all of that communications for winter. So that awareness should improve. But certainly fall was different. Thanks.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Krista. I'll go to a live question. Judy, you've got your hand up, so if you can unmute, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Claude. My question is going to really be directed at Chris, and I don't know whatever version of winter 2022 planning we're at, but you said we have to work together. We have to collectively help our students succeed, and that we need to stem the tide of withdrawal. We need to bring in our best pedagogical practice. We've got 50 years of face-to-face delivery. And so if it makes sense, we have to deliver face-to-face, and we have to prepare contingency plans. You also shared that we've got high flex pilots happening on campus, but I'm assuming, since I haven't heard of any specifically, they have to be very few in number. My question is, how are you going to realistically support a learner-driven approach that both the college and faculty strongly advocate and support? How are we going to meet learners in their anticipated and preferred learning styles across most of the campus, most of our courses? And how is that going to be achievable if we're trying to get more than one modality out there? Are you going to be providing chairs with support to pursue multimodality planning and loading to accommodate and address learner-driven classes?
You pack a lot into a question, Judy. Thanks for that. I mean, they're great questions, and I will fully admit that this is a large, complicated challenge in front of us. But I also know that we have a large and talented and creative group of employees in the academic area. And so we do need to find ways of sorting through this. I realize that's not a concrete answer. So let me touch on one of the things that you had asked about. The multimodal delivery will be quite limited for the winter term. This is because we have invested only in a limited number of classrooms in order to help learn how to do all of this. So I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but there are very few. And they are getting strong support for learning and teaching services, who are helping helping faculty learn how to succeed in this new modality of delivery. So LTS is there to support. LTS is a staunch supporter of the work that faculty do in all of their endeavors. And so that's the first stop to go to. You asked about support for chairs. I'm not quite certain I understand the nature of that question, but we do work very closely with the registrar's office and scheduling to understand the needs and the process that has to happen in the scheduling of those sorts of activities. We try to do it in ways that limit the amount of manual activity so that we can do automation of this. But this is a new thing for us, and it's not currently programmed into our systems. So that's part of it as well. And looking forward, making sure that we are including these needs in the R3 as we move forward. So it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to be a process, and we're not going to do all of it at once. And so I'm thinking back. Is there anything? I know I've answered only portion of your question. Would you care to follow up, Judy?
Sure. So, you know, your comment about multimodality and not knowing the exact number, that's fine. But my question in terms of supporting chairs in terms of loading meant exactly what you just addressed. The heavy duty lifting that's required through the registrar's office to accommodate in areas where we have several courses being delivered. And if we have students who, we've heard from faculty who have shared that their students have said, oh, I would really like to stay in remote because this is a very, you know, it works really well with my learning style. They don't want to be fully online. They still want to have a sense of being involved in the Algonquin campus life, and the remote learning works for them. But we have faculty and students who would like to be back on campus. So I'm wondering if you're going to provide support for that kind of scheduling rather than just the multimodality high flex option.
Sure. Thanks for the follow-up. In a large program where you frequently have multiple sections of the same course, I mean, yeah, quick thought is, well, why don't we just schedule some of them to be remote and some of them to be face-to-face? Problem solved. Yep. Unfortunately, that gets into a systems problem of scheduling that. How do you decide which students are going to be remote, which students are going to be face-to-face, when at this point in time, we don't support self-registration of students. That's a systems challenge for us, as well as a cultural challenge for us. So, you know, we're looking forward to the future. So there are some small number of programs that I've been made aware of. Krista, I hope I'm not telling you something you don't know, but where faculty have said, well, not faculty, the program team has said, okay, so we're going to schedule everything face-to-face, and then we are going to manually move some students to an online, a remotely delivered section. So there are some places that are doing that, but I fully acknowledge that that is extra work. I am not asking anybody to do that at this point in time, but trying to find the necessary supports to make it happen. That's not an undue burden on the registrar's office, the program support team, whether it's the budget officers or the program support officers. That's not something I'm willing to ask them to do right now because it is additional manual work. It's a complicated problem, and there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all, and we're not all going, which is why I haven't mandated this is what we're doing for the fall. There are some programs that only have one section of each program and don't have that option. So then it's a choice of, well, are we going to be remote or are we going to be face-to-face? And we don't even have the option of thinking about how we would have some sections remote and some sections face-to-face. So we are working with that. The support that chairs are getting are regular conversations with the deans, with the registrar's office, with the recruiting team, all making sure that we're asking exactly the same questions that you're asking, to make sure that we are making informed decisions and we're not deciding to do something that has an unanticipated consequence on workloads.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. I hear you that you are not mandating that kind of manual work. I would respectfully contend, though, then we are not fully learner driven, because we have those different requests from learners and we're not able to meet them.
Yeah, I think as Chris mentioned, this is going to be an evolution. It's going to be progress over time. I don't think we can, with the resources at our disposal and with where we're at, in particular in the pandemic, that we would be, to the extent that perhaps people's expectation would be that we could be everything to everyone's choices. I think mileage will vary dependent on the program folks are in, and the size of that program, and what flexibility we have to have some sections face-to-face, some section hybrid, some section completely remote, whereas some programs may not. We may not be there yet. It's just the economics will not work. And so I think this will be over time that we'll be experimenting, and perhaps high flex will be a response to that will allow students to be face-to-face if they so wish, at a distance if they so wish. But that will take time to make that investment more broadly than we have right now. But it's work in progress, Judy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Judy. I'll go to a couple of Q&A questions that were written, and then I'll come back to our next person who has their hand up. So the first one says, the app is not accessible for everyone, in bracket AODA compliant. Neither are paper copies for coming on campus. When will this be going to be rectified? I wonder if I can ask Mike to speak to that. The app comes under their purview.
Yeah, we've been made aware of this situation, and we're currently working with the external provider who has developed the app to rectify this issue. We're hoping that in the very near future, this will be rectified and we won't have this issue any further.
Mike, can you elaborate on the paper version of the form on campus?
I think the question is just basically that with the paper version and the actual app, it's not AODA compliant. So we're working with our app provider just to make sure that it is updated and that it is AODA compliant. We're hoping to reintroduce the app. There'll just be an update. So those who currently have the app will not have to re-download it. It'll just be an update to the app service, and it should be, once it's rectified, AOD compliant.
Okay, keep us posted on that. That's again important to our college community that we are, universally accessible. So we'll look forward to those improvements. Thank you, Mike. The next question, maybe for you as well, Mike. What is Algonquin College's response as an employer to staff with mask exceptions with respect to provincial and municipal law? Will you require documentation for the exception?
So currently we're following the city bylaw. I think it's 2020-186, just with regards to mandatory use of masks. The requirement is for an attestation for someone who has a medical exemption not to wear a mask. Security is confronting all at doors to make sure that people are wearing the mask. If someone isn't and they attest that they have a medical condition, as per the bylaw, we are allowing them in and going with that attestation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. I'll go to the next person who has their hand up, Annette Boozy. Annette, if you can unmute, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My question is also for Chris Jansen. There's a lot of concerning information that you shared with us this morning around the winter 2022 semester, but I'm going to stick to one point in my question today. We're now at the stage in the pandemic where we know a lot more about COVID. So we know that masking and vaccination are excellent tools at lowering the transmission rate, but that they're not enough to prevent it. So regardless of the direction from MCU, we need classroom capacity limits and social distancing as part of our COVID protocol. Respectfully, Chris, I interpret this as budget considerations being too high of a priority for the college. And some may say that it's naive not to factor the budget into these types of decisions, but I think that the health and the safety and well-being of our college community should be the highest priority of all, especially now. So my question to you is, why wouldn't things like classroom capacity limits and social distancing requirements also be included in the loading considerations for winter 2022? This is certainly something that is within the college's control and that we can do.
Sure. I'm eventually going to turn to Mike to add some additional thoughts from facilities from the risk management team. But the decisions around the winter term truly were a step toward, and truly are a step toward, the return and recovery from the pandemic. We had the direction from MCU that even for the beginning of the fall term, we did not need the physical distancing requirements any longer. And chose at that point to, under the very strong recommendation from Ottawa Public Health, we chose to go beyond what we were required to do by MCU and maintain that physical distancing requirement for our campuses, which effectively limits the amount of activity that happens on our campus. Recognizing that with the progress of the vaccines, which are not, and I agree with you, they are not the complete end all and be all of COVID protection. It is certainly an incredibly important tool in the toolbox. As is effective hand hygiene, as is the mask wearing, as is physical distancing, all of those other pieces. And so as we are closely monitoring the progress of the pandemic, as we are very carefully listening to the advice from our public health agencies and taking under advisement the direction that we're getting from the ministry. As I stated, we made the starting baseline assumption that the physical distancing would not be required in order to keep our people healthy and safe for the winter term. As we progress further down the road and get closer and closer to that winter term, if it becomes apparent that we do still need to keep that physical distancing in order to keep our people healthy and safe, we will do so. And we will reinstate those physical distancing requirements. So it is about the health and safety of our people, and recognizing that progress is being made in the battle against this pandemic. So, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's good, Chris. We continue to develop as an organization, and I think we've erred on the side of caution with regards to all aspects of the pandemic, and we're going to continue to look at all options going forward to make sure that we ensure that our campus is safe and healthy for everyone to attend.
So my question was really, why would you choose to not continue to be cautious with the approach, right? So you said that you've gone above and beyond, or maybe that's not your exact words, but you chose to maintain social distancing requirements this semester. Why would we, not knowing how things are going to be in winter 2022, why would you lift those requirements at this time? Especially considering other things that you said, like we don't want to get deeper in than we need to, and that we need to be prepared to pivot back. why would we not plan to be more cautious for winter 2022?
Claude, I saw your mic off. I was wondering if you were saying something. My apologies.
But I may come in. Go ahead. And I'll come back on.
Well, again, we needed to form a baseline decision around where we were planning. So again, we've been working on those contingency plans all along. We know that there has been a growing restlessness around the pandemic, and looking forward to a future where we might come out of it. So the real question is, where are we at within the pandemic? When the ministry came out very publicly stating you do not have to physically distance any longer. Actually, I believe they went even further than that, and we're starting to talk about what they expected of us. You know, that's on the table. It's one of the possibilities that we have to consider, and based on where we are at, we believe that there is a reasonable likelihood that we will be able to safely come back to campus in the ways that we've described, and maintain the health and safety of our people. If we did not believe that, we would not be saying that we no longer needed the physical distancing requirements.
If I can add, I mean, this will continue to evolve. We continue to monitor what comes out of either the ministry, the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, our Ottawa Public Health Unit, and surrounding regional public health units as well. Again, as Chris mentioned, when the communique came out, I had an exchange with Dr. Vera Etches about what does that mean for the Ottawa region. She quickly came out with an added, because let's face it, the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario said what he said about removing capacity limits and physical distancing requirements, but he also added the line, please check with your local public health authorities, which I did. And on that basis, Dr. Etches came back with a strong recommendation for the fall, that for the start of fall, that we maintain those in place, and which we have. This will continue to evolve as greater rates of vaccination take place in Ottawa, and subject to continued guidance that we receive from OPH, we will adjust. At the moment, the sense is that those will not be required, but we'll continue to have mask requirement. We'll continue to have strong promotion of hand hygiene. Those things work. These vaccination, those are all tools that help reduce the transmission of COVID-19. And let me just add briefly on the topic of vaccination rates. Yes, it is true that for the Ottawa region, the rate of vaccination for the 18 to 29-year-old is not where we'd like to be. We'd like it to be much higher. It's only inched upward by about 1% a week since mid-August. And the same, I would say, for the next group, which is the 30 to 39-year-old. Our population on campus, this is all students, employees, and contractors who come to campus and require to prove the proof of vaccination. Between AA vaccinated and partially vaccinated, it's over 90%. So I feel quite comfortable that our population on campus is doing its part to help with reducing the rate of transmission of COVID-19, and will only continue to do so as the month progresses. So to us, it was a prudent starting point for planning purposes. And as Chris said, if we need to adjust, it's easier to adjust going the other way than if we start with restrictions and all of a sudden we're able to open up more broadly, because by then students have made choices to either stay where they live as opposed to coming to Ottawa, and folks have made different kinds of arrangements. So that's in that vein that we've proceeded as we have. But again, we continue to monitor this closely. My understanding from the Premier is that as of Saturday, they've increased indoor capacity limits. So, we are still in step 3, but they are cautiously proceeding because Ontario has done relatively well compared to other jurisdictions. Does that help address your concern, Annette?
So I guess I'll just leave it with, I am personally very nervous about the prospect of teaching. I typically teach a class with 50 students in the winter term. And the prospect of teaching a class with 50 students and having to be nervous about whether people are properly wearing their masks and that kind of thing, it makes me, I don't feel good about that. And I suspect that there are many other faculty members and college community members who share that concern.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to our next series of questions, and I know we have one more person with their hand up. We'll take a couple of questions that were written in Q&A, and I will come back to a person who has their hand up. Signs to exit college buildings do not seem as clear as the signs showing where to enter, green arrows on floor. Can exit signs be made clearer and adhered to? Security guards allow one or allow you to exit through the entrance area, and I'm not sure that's wise when lineups form to enter a building or get tested for COVID. Maybe I'll turn this one to Mike.
Well, I can take it, Claude.
All right, go ahead, Dwayne.
So yes, we will consult with our facilities management team. We'll take a look at this. Our understanding is there are signs that indicate where to exit at the entrances, and that there's a appropriate separation there. But we will take a look at that. We'll take a look at the exit signs as well to see if there's any deficiency in terms of their clarity. So, but thank you for that question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dwayne. Very quick question here. How's the remote work pilot going? Maybe I can turn this over to Diane.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that question, Claude, and handing it over. And I will ask David to be on deck for a more fulsome answer. I just wanted to start off with a few comments. Certainly, as we've talked about at numerous town halls, going back, I think, as early as February or March of this year, we have continued to evolve our thinking on this. We talked originally about a policy, a flexible work policy, and that thinking on that has changed. We've evolved the way we've been thinking about it and address it more as a work model approach. And as David walked us through in the August town hall and further to our multiple communications on that, I'm going to ask David to provide us where we are right now in our pilots to testing what our new future world of work will look like that is going to be here upon us faster than we know it. In addition to the information that we send out in college-wide communiques and of course answers to any town halls, we've also developed the a web page within the Human Resources website on work model, where you can go to that web page at any given time and be updated on the current status of where we're at. But just with that as an opening, David, perhaps I can turn it over to you, and you can show everyone that's participating on the town hall today where we're currently at.
Thanks, Diane, and thank you for that question. If I may, I would like to show a visual here, and I'll hopefully that's coming through on your screens. So this visual provides a summary of the project status and pilot implementation plan. Here you can see 3 phases, which includes areas going live and a staggered approach. Now, each area completed an intake form, which was evaluated by our work model collaboration team. To date, we have completed 3 readiness sessions from the phase 1 group, which included Algonquin College leadership team members and their people leaders. As part of our change management approach, we developed a readiness package for teams participating in the pilot. This includes processes, such as determining position eligibility for work model options, includes roles and responsibilities, training, frequently asked questions, checklists, and most importantly, health and safety guidelines. We have also developed an evaluation framework that helps us to gather data at the pilot midpoint, as well as at the end of the pilot program. I can tell you that in the first 3 sessions that our project team held, we learned quite a bit. We solicited feedback on all our draft processes, and our toolkits continue to grow and evolve, and we're really applying an agile approach. Overall, we are on track per plan and look forward to testing, learning, and hearing from our employees on their experience and impacts of enabling various work model options. We'll continue to update our website per Diane's earlier comment and keep everyone informed. Thank you, and back to you, Claude.
Okay, thank you very much, David and Diane. I'll go to one more question, then we'll go to Alicia next. I'm worried about coming on campus and not everyone getting vaccinated yet. I have a vulnerable family member at home, and the last thing I want is to do is bring COVID with me home. Would I be able to be accommodated to work from home? Maybe Diane?
Thank you. And thank you for this question. I mean, certainly the anxiety is there. We also heard it from Annette in her comments and questions to the panel. One of the things that I would urge you to do is to have a conversation with our wellness and abilities team to really kind of understand what are the options available to employees. Certainly, they offer office hours where it's a drop-in, where you can have a confidential conversation with a wellness and abilities counselor on our team, and to really kind of understand what are some of the supports that could be provided to you. So I would like to leave my answer at that. I hope that is not vague enough. I certainly have pointed you to a potential resource as to where you can go to get more information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Okay, we did have a hand up, but it went down. So in the meantime, unless it comes back up, we'll go to the next Q&A question. It is concerning to see that the international recruitment numbers are not being met. As we all know, international recruitment plays a significant role for the college. Can someone share what are the regional recruitment strategies in place to meet expected numbers, and how are these strategies being assessed? So I don't know, Chris, do you want Ernest to answer this, or you're going to start it off?
Let me just start quick and give an SCSC perspective, and then I'll hand it off to Ernest for the international details. But the Strategic Enrollment Steering Committee, SCSC, meets weekly to discuss all things related to enrollment, from recruitment, marketing, admissions with the registrar's office, international recruitment, the academic deans. The discussions that we have are around recruitment strategies. It's not simply a case of if you build it, they will come. So if the academic side says, okay, we've got all of these, we're gonna create all these programs and all of these seats are available. That only works if the students actually want to come to those programs. And they're able to come to the programs. One of the significant challenges that we had this year was the international students were not able to travel as they have been before. They hadn't been able to get study permits fast enough. There were many things that were outside of Algonquin's control that arose during the year, but the Strategic Enrollment Steering Committee is paying very close attention to what options there are available to create more space for international students so that the recruitment teams can actually have places that those students want to come. So Ernest, do you have anything you wish to add about regional recruitment?
Sure, I'll just add 2 points. So one, Chris has touched on, and that is the ability for students to get study permits via the Government of Canada, which allows them to come to Canada and study at our programs. IRCC has been incredibly flexible up until the end of December of this year, where they've allowed international students to study remotely and have placed other means to help us still attract international students to our programs. While those have been very useful, many international students have deferred their studies as they want a Canadian experience, and that could be a Canadian experience in class where a program is at least partially face-to-face. But at the very least, if their program is remote, they would like a Canadian experience where they're here in Canada in a Canadian time zone and not necessarily overseas in China or India, trying to join a program in late at night according to their time and potentially with poor bandwidth. And so we saw that happen in our September intake, where a lot of Indian students chose to defer, and we saw our enrollment targets not being met for that period. Just on the question of regional recruitment, as I previously touched on, we have regional recruitment offices in China, India, Vietnam, Brazil, and Turkey. They work very closely with our recently reorganized International Education Center, where we now have an associate director who is responsible for regional recruitment. And we take various different means to promote regional recruitment, whether it's through pathway agreements, partnerships, marketing activities, visits, webinars, or a whole range of activities that is customized for that local region, because of course India is not China and China is not Brazil. And I have to say we've had some success even with COVID in our refocus of having associate directors in charge of regions, as we've seen a strong growth in enrollment outside of India and China, especially from Africa, the MENA region, and South America, greatly exceeding our targets. And so this, the last part, is how we assess our enrollment targets. We, as Chris said, SCSC breaks down enrollment targets. IEC further breaks them down for a geographic region, and we track enrollment by that region and the conversion rate of applicants to students who are actually presenting in our classes. So for example, we will know how many applicants we need from India to meet the target that's been assigned to India. And then we track whether our conversion rate, meaning that we're receiving high quality applicants and they're converting and presenting themselves with us, if we're meeting those numbers. So we do track almost all the way down to a country specific enrollment target.
All right, thank you very much, Ernest and Chris. Our next question has to do with entrances to buildings. So there are a few entrances on campus which have checkpoints. Some buildings are separate, example, V or M building. Where are they going to be vetted before coming in if there's no security checkpoint? Not sure, Dwayne or Mike?
I can take it, Claude.
Okay.
So we do have a couple of areas. Typically, there's two options. For those buildings that are connected with other buildings, we ask that staff and students go through a controlled security access point. For those as V building and M building, we've actually worked with the academic areas to provide them with some training to help control that access so that staff and students are vetted when they do come through there.
All right, short and sweet answer. Like it. Thank you, Mike. Okay, our next question is, ITS sent out a communication on September 22nd on a mandatory secure measure where an app must be downloaded on your mobile, says that by device. What if I don't want to download an app on my personal phone? I don't like having multiple apps on my phone because of possible hacking. I think this is in reference to the multi-factor authentication. Dwayne, would you like to take this one?
Sure, thanks, Claude. So yes, there was a communication sent out about this new security measure for authenticating users to our systems. And there was a great deal of due diligence undertaken before we took this approach. And just briefly, from a privacy perspective, this app does not permit college administration to gain access to any personal information. Once the registration is complete, the app is simply there to provide the user with a security code and gain access to systems. From a legal perspective, we did consult with legal on this to ensure that it was an appropriate measure to authenticate users. And it's also required to address the recommendations from the Ernst & Young audit done of our information security, cybersecurity practices. That was done a few years ago. We consulted with other higher education institutions and confirmed it is a best practice. It is the recommendation from Microsoft to implement this type of measure. And security has reviewed the app, and we've come to the conclusion it will not increase the risk of users' phones being hacked. So it's I know it may not fully address your question, but I just want to give assurance that significant due diligence has been done to implement this measure. And again, all for the objective to protect our information and our data and maintain privacy in an appropriate manner.
All right. Thank you, Dwayne. Our next question is as follows. Memo just went out with additional time added to Faculty Swift to address the instructional changes required to Zoom teaching and additional time provided. We are now September and nothing still has been done for support staff. We talked about it last town hall and every town hall. When will we see action? Do you even care about your support staff? Yes, we do care about our support staff, and we've been talking about the low workload issue and volume for some time, and we've had conversation with Christine Kelsey, president of Local 416. This is not going to be an immediate solution that because it impacts different employee groups within the support staff local differently. We certainly want to make sure we have solutions that address long-term issues that have been brought up. Perhaps I can ask Diane to speak to that.
Thanks, Claude. Essentially, as I mentioned after Krista answered a specific question, I think it was either question 1 or question 2, about workload within the support staff in the registrar's office. And she spoke to her business units staffing requirements for their service delivery. As I'd mentioned, it continues to be our priority as we have our conversations with our support staff union president, our academic union president, and for our administrators. There's all of the different employee groups. As I'd mentioned previously, our executive team has set aside some time to continue this conversation at the executive team table over the course of the next couple of weeks, where we continue to look at what are the solutions for the different employee groups. Certainly our support staff continues to raise their hand and say, this is a critical issue. I know David Soltis has had the opportunity to be involved just to receive some of the information from the workload work group, which is, I believe the budget officers have gotten together to look for what are some of the solutions that they could help bring forward to the college to say, here are some of our conflicting demands and deadlines, and here are some potential solutions that they're coming up with and providing it back to the college. I don't know, David, if you wanted to make any comments on that, but certainly we are keeping this at the top of our concern and our priority list.
Yeah, thanks, Diane, and thank you for that question. For sure, I've sat in on several meetings there and got a good look at some of the root causes and challenges that budget officers are experiencing, as well as some potential solutions. For sure, there's going to more dialogue to come and more discussion, and I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks, for sure, we can continue that and search for potential options to address that issue.
All right, let's continue to work on this. Clearly, this is a problem that has been heightened by the pandemic, clearly, as a number of things had to be put in place of an urgent nature in order to address the situation. It's exacerbated existing problems that we were facing before the pandemic. And so action is required on this, and we'll continue to turn our attention to this, as was mentioned by David and Diane, and bring back some clear steps forward on this matter. Our next question is a long one, so bear with me here. When decisions are made to add new programs or a new intake, the only consideration made is in regard to staffing or for faculty. Each new program or intake requires the support staff to load the course, the support staff to register the students, to schedule the course, the support staff to do the onboarding and payroll for the new faculty, support staff to budget for the program intake, and support staff to review compensation and for the new faculty, and more. Why isn't these discussion about the need for more support staff when new intakes of programs are added? We already have full jobs, and the assumption that we can just take on the extra work is creating a lot of burnout. So new programs, new intakes, and how are we adding the appropriate compensation or work compensation, that is, to support staff to address that, or staffing for support staff. Chris, can you speak to how that's applied?
Sure. Great question. It's a beautiful follow-on from the previous question. And much of the answer, while I recognize that it's not the concrete, here's the solution we're putting into place kind of answer, please accept that it is something that we are very seriously looking into, looking at workforce planning within the academic area. It's something I'm strongly committed to and firmly trying to support. And it's not all happening at once. And I recognize that for support staff to see the memo come out with some additional complementary time for regular course maintenance for faculty may seem like, well, I don't care about the support staff, all I care about is faculty. It's not true. We are working very hard to find those sorts of meaningful solutions for our support staff as well. And stay tuned, keep our feet to the fire. We are trying very hard to make some progress soon, recognizing that as programs grow, as we add new programs, as we increase the number of intakes, as we move to equilibrating the academic offerings across all 3 terms, including the spring summer term, we have work to do. And please continue to work with us to find solutions that are going to work for everybody.
Okay, clearly we have some work to do there to make sure that we don't continuously add programming as the example in the question here, and I expect the same folks to continue to work on those added programs. So we'll have to work on something that makes sense from a formula point of view to make sure that as we grow some departments, they're staffed appropriately to address all of this. All right, our next question is, who is reviewing approving exemption applications to vaccination policy? I guess it would depend if it's for an employee or for a student. So maybe we can start with an employee and then we'll go to a student.
Thanks, Claude. I'll take that from the employee perspective. So when an employee completes a attestation through the mobile safety app, it is received in risk management if it's an employee as identified by the within the app. It's a list is then sent to our wellness and abilities team within human resources. So when we receive those exemption applications, if it is a medical accommodation and or a bona fide protected human rights accommodation request or exemption, it gets vetted by LifeWorks, which is a third-party disability provider, and or our legal counsel that we have on retainer to vet these in a to ensure that it's being done by legislation, to ensure that it's being done by ensuring that the college is granting anything that is required under Ontario human rights or is required under the medical accommodation. And so it is being done by these experts. So perhaps I can turn it over for the learners. Krista?
Certainly, thanks, Diane. So the student requests do come in and they go to the Director of Student Support Services office, that's Ben Bridgestock. And through a similar process that Diane described, the decision is made. And should that student be unhappy with the decision, there is an appeals process. And the Ombudsman's office is certainly involved in overseeing some of that too, for fairness and making sure the process is robust. And the appeals are seen through a committee that's represented by Risk Management, Health Services, Spiritual Center, and Student Support Services. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Krista, and thank you, Diane. Our next question is, says, going back to workload and putting in some long hours without being compensated, talking about administrators in bracket. What is the college doing about some of us working 10 to 12 hours a day? It seems that we have forgot about the extra work that the pandemic brought for some departments of the college. All right, so again, this is making sure that we recognize the additional work that all of our employees are doing, and sometimes during extraordinary periods, such as the pandemic, which is now into its 18th or 19th month at the college. Certainly we recognize that there are peaks and valleys, and sometimes that, especially start of term, there are times when more work is being done, and how are we recognizing this? So maybe I can ask Diane to give a go at this question here.
Thanks for the synopsis of the question and for the question. So a couple of things certainly that we're feeling within human resources is we currently are still within the pandemic and for the most part somewhat in a crisis mode as we continue to deal with different things that come up. And then of course our normal business cycle and our normal business operations continue to happen, which causes some collisions. So what I can speak to is what we are doing within our team. And we constantly talk about priorities. We talk about it at our huddles. We talk about what is our capacity, and then what are some of the solutions that we can be doing and putting in place within our area to level out some of the work, recognizing that we do have peaks and valleys, but sometimes it feels like it's always a peak. And so I can tell you that's what we're doing. I understand my colleagues are also doing that within their teams to have those conversations on a regular basis about capacity and how are we dealing with that. I can speak to the fact that we do that at the executive team when we have our weekly huddle and we talk about capacity. We talk about capacity all across the college. And what are some of the barriers that people are facing, and what are some of the things that from an executive level that we can be addressing? So that's the best that I can answer at this time.
Thanks, Diane. Anybody else from the panelists want to chime in? Again, this is across college, so not just a Diane or an HR perspective would be welcome here. Krista?
I guess one of the things I might add is that don't be afraid to ask. I know that sounds really, I think it's really difficult to put forward asks when everything's really difficult, but I will say that I know on my team, I really welcome that honesty from the team, whether it's support staff or administrators or other employee groups, and that our best ability to respond and act is when we have good information. And so, putting that forward, and then it provides me with an opportunity to advocate. And I suspect that's true for anybody else here, and to really understand the impact. Sometimes things can go unseen or unknown, or you may assume they're known. And so I just encourage people to continue to voice that with the people with whom you work most closely. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for your answers, both Krista and Diane. We'll go to one last question. I see the time here. I want to make sure we give time for closing here. Why are some departments going back to campus when we know COVID cases in Ottawa are rising? What is the college doing about safety measures? It seems that we talked about returning to the office in January, but some people were asked to be on campus last week. Are we not giving enough notice to the employees when returning on campus? It seems unfair, don't you think? All right, so I'll start off, and maybe I'll invite my colleagues to chime in as well. The college has a stellar record regarding safety on campus, and I'll knock on wood right now somewhere in my office here. We have not had on-campus outbreaks or on-campus transmission. We take great pride in the work that we do around health and safety. Again, the measures that were put in place immediately as soon as we knew we had an infection issue is, again, the signage that went up, the hygiene, the sanitizer bottles, washing one's hand, cleaning surfaces frequently. People, asked to, if you're coughing or sneezing, do so in your elbow, not in your hands. Making sure that people, again, as the measures ramped up, we introduced a mask back in early July 2020, even before the province mandated it. Same thing for physical distancing. We've put all these measures and they continue to be in place because we know those things work. They work effectively at controlling infection spread. The vaccine is just the latest measure to be added to this arsenal of tools. It's not a panacea and it's not in place of. It's just another layer. All right, so all those things need to work collectively together. And again, we message this every chance we get until I'm a broken record about our safety measures on campus. Again, people should feel safe coming on campus because all of these things have been and continue to be in place in order for us to do our work. Reason you may be recalled to come on campus is because we have a number of students, a number of employees who work on campus, who study on campus, and we need a certain amount of face-to-face transaction to take place to support our learners in their endeavors, to support fellow employees. So again, we're being measured in our return to campus. We've asked some people that need to be on campus for specific aspects of work, and everything's in place in order to assist with the health and safety. Oh, and I didn't mention the plexiglass all over the place that we got. Again, another measure that we put in place again to ensure we don't have that transmission. So I'll leave it at that unless there's another member who wished to add. Not sure if Mike wants to add anything.
Sure. Again, I spoke to it earlier. I think there's a lot of angst and anxiety out there from people who haven't been on campus. We haven't stopped being on campus. And what I can tell people is we are continuously looking at our protocols. We are constantly working with Ottawa Public Health to make sure that this campus is safe. Over the last year and a half to 2 years, we've investigated over 500 cases of suspected, I want to be clear about that, COVID. And we've had very little amount of positive. And as Claude said earlier, we have had no on-campus transmission here at Woodruff. So we're working very hard to make sure it's very safe. As a side note, I guess a point to add is we've actually had some key people from Ottawa Public Health on campus recently, and they were very impressed with our protocols and our procedures in place as they had to come through our front doors, and they were immediately confronted with security, and security asked them questions specific to vaccination and everything else. So I think we've done a very good job. I think it's something that everyone needs to take some ownership of, and we continue to do a great job of making sure that our staff and students are safe here. Everyone out there is going to Costco or grocery stores or other places. I feel very comfortable in saying that the college is safe, very safe, safer than a lot of these places that people are going to.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. And I see we're at 5 minutes to the hour. So in the interest of time, I know we have more questions that we haven't had a chance to answer. As I said in my intro housekeeping notes, we will take away those questions. We will provide answers to them, and then we'll post them on MyAC at a later date, and we'll announce that so that you can go and check out the answers to those questions. I want to thank everyone for coming together this morning. I think at one point we had close to 400 people in attendance at our town hall this morning. It shows you continue to have strong interest in connecting together, seeking answers to questions you have, and being able to do so with a good mind. And I know it's not always easy. There is anxiety around the situation that we're living in. I appreciate that. And I continue to encourage everyone to keep our values top of mind as we go about our daily business to educate, to ensure that our learners have what they need in order to be successful in their chosen careers, and to do so every time we come together, to do so with a good mind. I thank you for your time this morning, and I'll turn it over to Ron to close out our event. Ron, over to you. Your sound is...
It's got
Yeah, you're good.
driver. I don't know why it does that. My apologies, folks. So there's 3 or 4 things I'll try to say really quickly. The first is this idea of the good mind. And I just want to acknowledge that it's a difficult time, and people are stressed. And over this next year, we're going to be talking about how we incorporate some Indigenous knowledge and storytelling in the rebranding of the Algonquin wolves, and this idea of a dark wolf and a light wolf, and investing in feeding the good wolf. And it takes work to cultivate that good mind, and it's a difficult time. And I know that we bring our personal lives with us everywhere we go, and we have to care for that and for each other. The other thing I'd say quickly is just to acknowledge all the different partnerships and work that folks from all over the college and really all over Ottawa is doing as an investment into September 30th. We really, truly are sharing the responsibility for that time of reflection, and to acknowledge that. The last thing I'll say is just that, when we come together and we do an opening, we always do a closing. And so we always do 3 things. The first thing we do is we acknowledge all those that came before us, all our ancestors and elders who made their own kinds of investments and sacrifices in order to get us where we are today. Then we acknowledge each other for the work that we do, ideally for the perpetual betterment of our community, and in our case, to help transform hopes and dreams into lifelong success. And third, we acknowledge all of those faces who have yet to come, those future generations, for it's them that we ultimately are doing this work. And so we put our minds together, we bundle a thank you, and we throw that to the 4 directions, and we say, Gustana Holadu and Gwatni Guhge. And so our minds are one, and then we say, Daneto. So with that, Daneto, be well, be healthy, and cultivate the good mind. Yamongo, Onukiwahe, Daneto.